The poor cleaner with a PhD who silenced a rude billionaire CEO with just one word when he tried to humiliate her using German. Eine weitere nutzlos Person, die mir Zeit stiehlt. That is what he said. Another useless person wasting my time. He muttered it in German, not meant for anyone to hear, the casual cruelty of a man who had stopped seeing people as human beings somewhere between his first billion and his third. She was making $17 an hour emptying his trash cans. He was worth $3.2 billion, and in 3 seconds, she made him feel like the smallest person in that room. Interessant. One word, perfectly pronounced, dripping with measured irony. And Jordan Lewis, the man who had built an empire on never being caught off guard, froze like he had been slapped. His assistant Marcus stopped breathing. The air in that conference room turned to ice. And Keisha Monroe, the cleaning lady in the blue uniform who had been invisible to everyone in that building for 2 years, finally let herself be seen. What did you say? Jordan turned slowly, his expression shifting from surprise to something more complicated. Embarrassment, perhaps, or the first flickers of genuine attention he had given another human being in longer than he could remember. I said interesting. Keisha switched back to English with the same calm she used when mopping floors. Your pronunciation is excellent, by the way. Private tutors, I am guessing, or boarding school in Munich. The Bavarian influence is subtle but present. The silence stretched between them, like a wire about to snap. You speak German, Jordan said, and it was not a question. It was the sound of a man realizing he had made a terrible mistake. Among other languages, Keisha folded her cleaning cloth carefully, methodically, like she had all the time in the world, though I find it is rarely useful in my current position. Most people who speak German in corporate settings assume the cleaning staff cannot understand them. It makes conversations quite revealing. Have you ever been dismissed by someone who never bothered to learn your name? Have you ever been treated like furniture, something to move around, not someone to talk to? Have you ever watched a powerful person assume they knew everything about you from a single glance at your uniform? Most people who get insulted in a language they supposedly do not understand stay silent. They swallow the humiliation. They finish their work and go home and try to forget that someone thought so little of them that they did not even bother to whisper. Keisha Monroe was not most people. But what would make a billionaire CEO insult a cleaning lady in German? What kind of emptiness lives inside a man who has everything except the ability to see the people around him? And what was it about her single-word response that completely destroyed his carefully constructed superiority? Stay with me, because this story is about to take turns you absolutely will not see coming. This is a story about invisible people and the power they hold when they finally choose to be seen. This is a story about second chances and whether anyone truly deserves them. This is a story about what happens when two broken people from completely different worlds collide in a conference room on the 52nd floor and discover that everything they thought they knew about each other was wrong. But first, let me take you back to the beginning. Let me show you who these people were before that single German word changed everything. The vacuum hummed against the pristine marble floors of the 52nd floor of Lewis Industries, and Keisha Monroe moved through the executive suite with a kind of invisible efficiency that came from 2 years of cleaning the offices of people who never saw her. She wore the standard blue uniform that marked her as part of the maintenance staff. Her natural hair was pulled back in a practical bun. Her hands were calloused from work that paid barely enough to cover rent in a city that seemed designed to crush people like her. 8:17 p.m. The executives had gone home hours ago, leaving behind the remnants of their important days. Half-empty coffee cups with lipstick stains. Crumpled papers that probably decided someone's career. The lingering smell of expensive cologne and quiet desperation masked as ambition. Nobody looked at the cleaning staff. Nobody wondered about their stories. That was the blessing and the curse of being invisible. You heard everything while existing nowhere. You learned secrets that could destroy careers, witnessed moments of vulnerability that powerful people would pay fortunes to hide, and none of it mattered because you were not a person to them. You were a function, a task, something that happened to the office the way electricity happened to the lights. Keisha had learned to use that invisibility. In 2 years of cleaning Lewis Industries, she had heard merger discussions that would not be public for months. She had witnessed affairs, breakdowns, and the quiet cruelty of people who thought no one was watching. She had learned more about corporate America from emptying trash cans than she ever had from her doctoral research. And yes, doctoral research. There was a dissertation sitting in her desk drawer at home. 247 pages on the evolution of German linguistic structures from the Romantic period through. modern corporate communication. She had defended it 3 years ago at Columbia University, stood in front of a committee of distinguished scholars, and proven that she had something valuable to contribute to human knowledge. Dr. Keisha Monroe. That was who she was supposed to be. But life does not care about supposed to be. She pushed the vacuum into the executive conference room, the same room where that confrontation would happen in exactly 11 minutes, though she did not know that yet. The glass table held the remnants of what had clearly been a tense meeting. Water glasses with condensation rings. Scattered papers covered in aggressive handwriting. The particular energy that lingered after powerful men argued about money. Keisha began her routine. Wipe the table. Empty the trash. Straighten the chairs. Check the carpet for crumbs. Her movements were automatic, mechanical, freeing her mind to wander where it always did. To her grandmother, to the woman who had raised her, who had escaped East Germany in 1961, who had built a new life teaching piano lessons in Brooklyn, who had pushed Keisha toward education as the one thing no one could take away. They can take your home, her grandmother used to say. They can take your money. They can take your job and your status and everything you think matters. But they cannot take what you know. That stays with you forever. Her grandmother had been wrong about that. Not about the knowledge staying, but about what it could protect you from. Because when the cancer came, when the medical bills started mounting, when the insurance refused to cover experimental treatments that might have given her grandmother a few more years, knowledge did not pay for chemotherapy. A PhD did not negotiate with hospital billing departments. Being educated did not stop the slow, grinding destruction of everything Keisha had built. She finished wiping the conference table and moved to the side console, her back to the door, her mind far away in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and grief. That was when the door swung open without warning. I told you, the Berlin contract is non-negotiable. Either they accept our terms or we walk away from the entire European expansion. Jordan Lewis entered like he owned the air, which technically he did own this building and most of the block it stood on. At 34, he had built Lewis Industries from his father's failing manufacturing company into a global conglomerate worth $3.2 billion. The business magazines called him brilliant. His employees called him ruthless. His ex-wife called him nothing at all because they had not spoken in 4 years. He was on his phone, gesturing sharply as he spoke. His dark suit was immaculate, tailored to his frame with the precision that only truly expensive clothing achieved. His jaw was set with the kind of determination that came from never being told no, or at least never accepting it when he was. Behind him trailed a younger man in an equally expensive suit. Marcus Webb, his assistant, who at least had the decency to nod awkwardly at Keisha when he noticed her. A small gesture. Almost nothing. But after 2 years of being invisible, almost nothing felt like something. "Give me 5 minutes," Jordan said into the phone. "I need to find the Stuttgart report. It should be in the conference room." He ended the call and began rifling through the papers on the table, completely oblivious to Keisha's presence. She continued wiping down the side console, her back to him, silent and unobtrusive as she had learned to be. Invisible. Safe. Surviving. "Marcus, tell Hendricks to stop being a coward and translate my message directly. I do not care if Mueller is offended. Business is not about feelings. The Stuttgart report is not here, sir." Marcus shuffled through papers, increasingly frantic. "Maybe your office? I left it here. I specifically remember putting it right on this table after the meeting with the Stuttgart team." Jordan turned, scanning the room, and his eyes landed on Keisha for the first time. His expression flickered with something between surprise and annoyance, as though her presence was an interruption to reality rather than part of its functioning. "Did you move any papers? From this table?" Keisha looked up, meeting his eyes directly. Something she had learned not to do. Meeting the eyes of people who preferred you invisible made them uncomfortable. It reminded them you were human, which was exactly what they were trying to forget. But something about his tone, the assumption that she was responsible for his disorganization, sparked the smallest flame of defiance. "No, sir. I only arrived 3 minutes ago. I have not touched anything on the table." Jordan stared at her for a moment longer than necessary, as though trying to place her, to figure out why a cleaning lady was speaking in complete sentences instead of mumbling apologies. Then he turned back to his search. "Probably that incompetent intern. Why we hire people who cannot follow basic filing instructions is beyond me." He muttered something under his breath in German, not meant for anyone's ears. A habit, perhaps, from dealing with international partners all day. The kind of thing you say when you think no one is listening, when you think the only person who might hear you does not matter enough to censor yourself around. Eine weitere nutzlos Person, die mir Zeit stiehlt. Another useless person wasting my time. The words hit Keisha's ears like cold water. She understood every syllable, every dismissive consonant, every casual piece of contempt. Her dissertation had focused on the evolution of German linguistic structures. She had spent 4 years parsing German texts more complex than Jordan Lewis's offhand insults. She should stay quiet. She should finish her work and leave. She should be invisible, the way this job required, the way survival demanded. She needed this job. $17 an hour was barely enough, but barely enough was more than nothing, and nothing was what waited for her if she got fired for talking back to the CEO. But something cracked inside her. Maybe it was the accumulation of 2 years of being unseen. Maybe it was the memory of her grandmother, who had fled a country that tried to erase her and rebuilt herself through sheer force of will. Maybe it was simply the exhaustion of pretending to be less than she was so that people like Jordan Lewis could feel more. Whatever it was, Keisha made a choice in that moment. A dangerous choice. The kind of choice that changes everything. Interessant. The single word hung in the air. Perfectly pronounced. The accent flawless, the tone carrying exactly the amount of irony she intended. Interesting. Jordan froze. His hands stopped moving through the papers. His shoulders went rigid. Slowly, like a man who was not quite sure he had heard what he thought he heard, he turned to face her. Marcus's eyes went wide. His mouth opened slightly, then closed again, like he was watching something impossible happen in real time. The silence stretched. 3 seconds. 5 seconds. An eternity compressed into a single held breath. What did you say? Jordan's voice had lost its commanding edge. Now it carried something else. Uncertainty. Exposure. The particular vulnerability of someone caught being their worst self. I said interesting. Keisha switched back to English, her voice calm, measured, giving nothing away. Your pronunciation is excellent, by the way. Private tutors, I am guessing. Or boarding school in Munich. The Bavarian influence is subtle but present. Jordan's jaw tightened. You speak German. Among other languages. Keisha folded her cleaning cloth with deliberate slowness, each movement precise and unhurried. Though I find it is rarely useful in my current position. Most people who speak German in corporate settings assume the cleaning staff cannot understand them. It makes conversations quite revealing. The power in the room had shifted. Keisha could feel it, that invisible current that determined who held authority and who deferred. For 2 years she had been on the wrong side of that current. Now, for just this moment, it flowed toward her. I apologize. Jordan's voice was stiff, the words clearly unfamiliar in his mouth. That was inappropriate. It was accurate, from your perspective. Keisha's voice carried no malice, only observation. To you, I am useless. I do not contribute to your quarterly earnings or your European expansion. I exist only as a function. Someone who empties your trash and sanitizes the surfaces you touch. Why would that person matter? The question landed like a blow. Jordan absorbed it with visible discomfort, his composure cracking in ways that probably had not happened in years. Marcus stood frozen near the door, clearly unsure whether he should intervene, flee, or pretend none of this was happening. That is not what I meant, Jordan said, though they both knew it was exactly what he had meant. It is exactly what you meant. Keisha was not attacking him. She was simply refusing to let him lie to himself. The difference between what people say and what they mean is actually a fascinating area of study. Linguistic pragmatics. The gap between literal utterance and intended meaning. In German academic circles, they call it the unspoken architecture of communication. Jordan stared at her. The confusion on his face was almost comical. He was used to cleaning staff who apologized for existing, who scurried out of rooms when executives entered, who certainly did not lecture him on German linguistic theory. Who are you? He asked, and for the first time, it was not an accusation. It was genuine curiosity. Keisha Monroe. I mean, who are you really? What is your background? How do you know about German linguistic theory? Before I answer that question, before I reveal what Keisha told him next, and how it completely changed everything he thought he knew about the invisible people around him, I need to pause and speak directly to you. If you have ever been dismissed based on your uniform, your job title, your circumstances, this story is for you. If you have ever watched someone powerful assume they knew everything about you from a single glance, this is for you. If you have ever bitten your tongue when you wanted to speak your truth because you could not afford to lose your job, this is for you. Hit that like button right now if you believe a person's worth is not determined by their paycheck. Share this video with someone who has ever been underestimated. Subscribe if you want to see how this confrontation reshapes both of their lives. Because what Keisha reveals next about who she really is, it is going to change everything. For Jordan, for her, and maybe for how you see the people around you who seem invisible. Now let us find out what happens when a billionaire realizes he just insulted someone with more education than most of his executives. You want to know who I am? Keisha set down her cleaning supplies on the console, a small act of defiance that said she was no longer in a hurry to leave. That is a complicated question. Who the first am now? Who the first was before? Who the first was supposed to become? Just answer the question, Jordan said, but the command had softened into something closer to a request. I was a professor. Keisha watched his face carefully as she spoke, noting each micro-expression, each shift in understanding. Adjunct faculty at Columbia University, teaching Germanic languages and literature while I finish my doctorate. You have a doctorate? I have a PhD, specialized in 19th century German Romantic poetry and its influence on modern corporate communication rhetoric. I published 3 papers in academic journals you have never heard of. I presented at conferences you would find insufferably boring. I spent 4 years becoming an expert in the exact kind of language you just used to insult me. The silence that followed was different from before. This was not the silence of confrontation. This was the silence of recalibration, of a worldview shifting on its foundations. You have a PhD, Jordan repeated slowly, as though saying the words aloud might make them make sense. From Columbia. Yes. And you are cleaning my conference room. Yes. Why? Keisha met his eyes directly. Because my grandmother got sick. Because medical bills in this country can destroy even people who did everything right. Because Columbia does not pay adjunct professors enough to survive a crisis. And when I had to choose between her treatment and my career, the choice was obvious. So now I clean your conference room at 8 p.m. for $17 an hour, and I listen to men like you insult me in languages you assume I cannot understand. The words hung in the air like an indictment. Because they were one. Jordan sank into one of the conference room chairs, his legs apparently no longer willing to hold him. Marcus remained frozen by the door, witnessing something that would probably make him rethink every assumption he had ever made about the support staff. I did not know, Jordan said quietly. Of course you did not know. Keisha's voice carried no bitterness, only exhaustion. You never asked. No one asks. We are invisible, Mr. Lewis. We are the people who make your world function smoothly, so you never have to think about us. We empty your trash and clean your bathrooms and overhear your secrets, and in return, you assume we are beneath your notice, beneath your consideration, beneath learning our names. I know your name now. You know it because I forced you to learn it. Because I spoke up instead of staying silent. How many other people in this building have you dismissed without ever wondering who they really are? Jordan did not answer. He did not have to. They both knew the answer was everyone. The building employed over 200 maintenance staff, janitors and cleaners and security guards and cafeteria workers, an invisible army that kept Lewis Industries functioning, and Jordan Lewis, who could recall the names of every executive in his organization, who remembered details about business contacts he had met once 5 years ago, could not have named a single one of them. I deserve that, he said finally. I deserve much worse than that. Probably, but I did not say it to punish you. I said it because it is true, and because the truth is the only thing worth saying. Something shifted in Jordan's expression. The defensiveness bled away, replaced by something that looked almost like respect. What happened to your grandmother? The question was unexpected, personal, the kind of thing executives did not ask cleaning staff, even cleaning staff who had just revealed they had PhDs and spoke multiple languages. She died. Keisha's voice was steady, but underneath it was a grief that never fully went away. 3 years ago, I took care of her until the end, and by the time she was gone, I had lost everything else. My apartment, my savings, my career, my credit, everything except what I know, which apparently is not worth much on the job market. I am sorry. Are you? Jordan looked up at her, and for the first time, Keisha saw something genuine in his eyes. Not the smooth performance of a businessman, not the calculated charm of someone who had learned to fake empathy because it was useful. Something real. Yes, he said, I am sorry for what you went through, and I am sorry for what I said, not because you caught me, Because it was wrong. I have said things like that 100 times, probably, to people who could not defend themselves. I just never had to face the reality of who I was dismissing. Marcus made a small sound by the door, a half cough that might have been surprise or might have been emotion poorly concealed. The reality is uncomfortable, is it not? Keisha picked up her cleaning supplies again, the conversation apparently reaching its natural end. Realizing that the people you step over are full human beings with histories and educations and dreams. It is much easier when we are just functions, just useless people wasting your time. She moved toward the door, her dignity intact, her point made. She had no expectation that this conversation would change anything. In her experience, powerful people expressed remorse all the time. It rarely survived contact with their actual behavior. But Jordan's voice stopped her. Wait, please. Keisha paused but did not turn around. The Stuttgart report, Jordan said. You have been cleaning this floor for how long? 27 months. Do you know where I might have misfiled it? I know it was here after the meeting, but I cannot seem to locate it. Now Keisha did turn, one eyebrow raised slightly. You are asking me for help finding your paperwork? You said you noticed things, that conversations are revealing. I am asking if you noticed where I put a report that I apparently cannot keep track of. It was a peace offering, she realized, not an apology, which he had already given, and which she had no reason to trust, but an acknowledgement, a recognition that she might be useful for something other than emptying trash. Third drawer of your desk in your office, Keisha said. Left side. You filed it incorrectly under Stuttgart, instead of Stuttgart pending, which is where your assistant usually puts active contracts. The drawer sticks slightly, which is probably why you forgot it was there. Jordan stared at her. You know my filing system? I know everything about this floor, Mr. Lewis. The coffee maker in the executive kitchen is developing a fault that will cause it to fail within the next 2 weeks. 3 of your vice presidents are having an affair with each other, which I know because they think the supply closet is private and they do not realize the cleaning staff has keys. Your CFO has been crying in his office after hours, which suggests something is wrong either personally or professionally. And your personal assistant, Marcus, despite looking terrified right now, is one of the few executives in this building who consistently says thank you to the maintenance staff. You should give him a raise. Marcus made a strangled sound that might have been gratitude, or might have been embarrassment at being included in this extraordinary conversation. Jordan leaned back in his chair, something between amazement and wariness crossing his face. You learned all that from cleaning? I learned all that from paying attention, from existing in spaces where no one thought I mattered enough to guard their behavior. Invisibility is a superpower, Mr. Lewis. You just have to know how to use it. She turned again toward the door, and this time, Jordan did not try to stop her. Ms. Monroe. Keisha paused. Would you have dinner with me? The question hung in the air, so unexpected that even Marcus made a visible double take. Keisha turned slowly, her expression guarded. Why? Because I have been looking for a translator consultant for the Berlin deal for 3 months. Because I just insulted an incredibly overqualified linguist to her face, and I would like the opportunity to apologize properly over something better than conference room lighting. Because, and Jordan's voice shifted here, becoming something rawer and more honest, because I cannot remember the last time anyone talked to me like a person instead of a net worth. And I realized just now that I have no idea how that happened. I am not looking for charity. This is not charity. It is a business dinner to discuss whether you might be interested in work that actually uses your education. What you do with that information is entirely up to you. Keisha studied him, weighing options she had not known existed 5 minutes ago. Everything in her experience warned against trusting powerful men who suddenly noticed her value. Men like this apologized when caught and then went right back to being who they had always been. Men like this offered opportunities as a way to assuage guilt, then withdrew them when the guilt faded. But something in Jordan's expression suggested he was as surprised by this conversation as she was. Something suggested that this was not performance, that for the first time in a long time, he was being genuinely honest about who he was and who he wanted to be. Thursday, she said finally, 7 p.m., and I picked the restaurant. Jordan nodded, and something in his posture relaxed. Whatever you want. Keisha left the conference room without looking back, her heart pounding in a way it had not pounded in years. Behind her, she heard Marcus's voice, hesitant and confused. Sir, what just happened? Jordan's answer was quiet, almost to himself. I think I just got humbled by someone who was invisible, and I think I deserved every second of it. The door closed behind Keisha, and she stood in the hallway of the 52nd floor, her cleaning supplies in her hands, her mind racing with possibilities she had trained herself to stop imagining. She had spent 3 years in survival mode, 3 years of just getting through each day, each week, each month, 3 years of trying not to think about who she had been or who she might have become. Now, for the first time since her grandmother's death, something felt like it might be about to change. She did not trust it. She did not trust him. She did not trust anything that seemed too good to be true, because everything that had ever seemed too good to be true had turned out to be exactly that. But she would go to that dinner. She would hear what he had to say. And she would see if Jordan Lewis was capable of being the person he had seemed to be for that brief moment in the conference room. Or if he was just another man who performed decency when it suited him and forgot about it when it did not. The elevator doors opened, and Keisha stepped inside, pressing the button for the ground floor. As the doors closed, she caught a glimpse of herself in the mirrored walls. Blue uniform, practical bun, calloused hands, and eyes that held something they had not held in 3 years. Hope. But to understand why that hope was so dangerous, to understand what Keisha had lost and what she was risking by letting herself feel anything at all, you need to know her story, the real story. Not just the facts she had told Jordan in the conference room, but the full weight of what had brought her to this moment. And to understand Jordan, to understand why a man with $3.2 billion was so empty that a single honest conversation could shake him this deeply, you need to know his story too. Let me take you back. Let me show you how they both arrived at that conference room, carrying wounds they had never told anyone about. Let me start with Keisha. Keisha Monroe was born in Brooklyn to a mother who left and a father who was never identified. Her grandmother, Elsa Mueller, had raised her from the age of 3. Elsa had her own story of survival. She had escaped East Germany in 1961, just months before the Berlin Wall went up, and escape became nearly impossible. She never talked about the details of that escape, what she had left behind, what she had done to survive. But sometimes, late at night, Keisha would hear her grandmother crying softly in her bedroom, and she would understand that some wounds never fully healed. Elsa worked as a piano teacher, giving lessons in the cramped Brooklyn apartment where she and Keisha lived. She had been a concert pianist in Germany before the war, before everything changed. Now she taught scales to children who did not practice and sonatas to retirees who wanted to feel cultured. But she poured everything she had into Keisha's education. You must learn, she would say, in her German-accented English that never fully softened despite 50 years in America. You must fill your mind with knowledge because that is the one thing they cannot take from you. Countries fall, governments change, money disappears. But what you know, what you truly understand, that stays with you forever. Keisha believed her. She studied obsessively, driven by some combination of love for her grandmother and fear of disappointing her. She learned German fluently by the age of 10, practicing conversations with Elsa until her accent was indistinguishable from a native speaker. She devoured books in both languages, falling in love with the German romantics, with Goethe and Schiller and Hölderlin, with the way their language captured emotions that English could only approximate. She was the valedictorian of her high school class. She earned a full scholarship to Columbia University. She graduated summa cum laude with a double major in German and linguistics, then moved directly into the doctoral program because there was never any question of doing anything else. Her grandmother was so proud, so impossibly, tearfully proud. You will be a professor, Elsa said, her eyes shining. You will stand in front of students and share everything you know. You will matter, Keisha. Your life will mean something. Keisha worked toward that dream for 8 years. 4 years of doctoral coursework, 4 more years of teaching as adjunct faculty while she finished her dissertation. She published papers. She presented at conferences. She built a reputation as a rising star in Germanic linguistic studies. But adjunct faculty at Columbia made $32,000 a year. No benefits, no job security, no path to tenure unless someone retired or died. She taught 5 classes per semester, graded hundreds of papers, held office hours in a shared cubicle the size of a closet, and still could not afford an apartment without roommates. She told herself it would get better. She told herself once she defended her dissertation, once she had that PhD, doors would open, full-time positions, tenure-track jobs, the security her grandmother had always wanted for her. Then, 6 months before her dissertation defense, her grandmother collapsed in the middle of a piano lesson. The doctors found it immediately. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4, metastasized to the liver. The prognosis was 6 months at best, but there were treatments that might extend that. experimental protocols that showed promise, surgeries that might slow the spread, all of them expensive beyond anything Keisha could afford. She tried everything, applied for grants, started crowdfunding campaigns, begged the insurance company to cover treatments they kept calling experimental and therefore not covered. She took out loans she knew she could never repay. She sold everything she owned that had any value. It was not enough. It was never going to be enough. She defended her dissertation while her grandmother was in chemotherapy, rushing from the defense committee to the hospital still wearing her one good suit. Her grandmother was too sick to attend, but Keisha recorded the whole thing on her phone, played it for her in the hospital room afterward. "Dr. Keisha Monroe," her grandmother whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I am so proud of you. So proud." 3 weeks later, Elsa Muller died. Keisha was holding her hand when it happened, watching the monitors flatline, listening to the sound of silence where her grandmother's breathing had been. She did not cry. Not then. Not at the funeral. Not for weeks afterward. She moved through the necessary tasks like a machine, closing out accounts, canceling subscriptions, dealing with the medical bills that kept arriving like letters from a vindictive God. The bills totaled over $400,000. Even after insurance paid what little it would pay, Keisha owed more than she would make in a decade of adjunct teaching. She filed for bankruptcy. She lost her apartment. She lost her credit. She lost every material thing she had built in 30 years of life. And then Columbia, in its infinite wisdom, cut the adjunct budget. Keisha's position was eliminated. Just like that. "Thank you for your service. Best of luck in your future endeavors." She applied for other teaching jobs. Dozens of them. But academic hiring moved slowly, and positions were scarce, and she was competing against hundreds of other desperate PhDs for every opening. The rejection letters piled up. So did the past due notices. So did the days when she could not afford both food and rent and had to choose. She took the cleaning job because it was the only thing available immediately, because it paid cash, because it let her work nights while she kept applying for academic positions during the day. That was 3 years ago. The academic positions never materialized. The job market stayed brutal. The bills eventually went to collections and then to oblivion as the bankruptcy wound its way through the courts. And Keisha stopped applying, stopped hoping, stopped thinking about who she had been supposed to become. She survived. That was enough. It had to be enough. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind sometimes, saying that knowledge could not be taken from you. But Keisha had learned that knowledge without opportunity was just another kind of prison. She knew things that no one would ever pay her to know. She had expertise that no one would ever value. She had a PhD that meant nothing when you were wearing a blue uniform and carrying a mop, until tonight, until she said one word in German and watched a billionaire's certainty crumble, until Jordan Lewis looked at her like she was a person instead of a function. She did not trust it, but she could not quite make herself ignore it either, because under all that grief and bitterness and exhaustion, some small part of her still wanted to believe her grandmother had been right, that what she knew mattered, that her life could mean something, that she was not invisible forever. Now let me tell you about Jordan. Jordan Lewis was born rich, which is not the same as being born happy. His father, Richard Lewis, had built a manufacturing company in the 1970s, made a fortune in automotive parts, and spent the rest of his life disappointed that his only son did not want to be a doctor. "I build things," Jordan tried to explain when he was 16. "I want to create businesses, make things grow. That is what I am good at." "You are good at making money," his father replied. "That is not the same as doing good. Doctors save lives. What do businessmen save?" The question haunted Jordan through college, through business school, through the early years of his career. He joined his father's company right out of MBA school, determined to prove that business could be about more than profit. He would transform Lewis Manufacturing into something that mattered, something that helped people. But his father was dying. Heart disease, discovered too late, progressing too fast. Within 2 years of Jordan joining the company, Richard Lewis was dead, leaving behind a business that was struggling and a son who suddenly had to save it or watch it fail. Jordan saved it, ruthlessly, efficiently. He cut costs and eliminated positions and restructured operations until the company was profitable again. Then he expanded. Acquisitions, new markets, diversification into industries his father had never imagined. By 30, Jordan Lewis was worth $1 billion. By 34, that number had more than tripled. But somewhere along the way, he'd become exactly what his father had feared. A man who saved nothing except money. A man who built nothing except wealth. A man who mattered to the business world and to absolutely no one else. His marriage was proof of that. He had married Victoria Ashford when he was 26, fresh off his first major acquisition, flush with success and desperate for someone to share it with. Victoria came from old money, the kind of family that traced their lineage back to the Mayflower and looked down on people who had merely earned their fortunes. But she was beautiful and charming, and she seemed to understand the demands of his world. She supported his ambitions. She hosted the right parties. She looked perfect on his arm at charity galas. Jordan told himself that was love. He told himself the growing distance between them was just the price of success. He told himself that eventually, when the company was stable, when he had achieved enough, he would focus more on their relationship. He never got the chance to find out if that would have worked. 3 years into the marriage, he discovered she was having an affair. He found out in the most humiliating way possible. A credit card statement showing hotel charges during a week she had supposedly been visiting her sister, charges at restaurants he had never heard of in cities she had never mentioned visiting. He confronted her calmly because by that point he had learned to handle everything calmly. Emotion was weakness. Reaction was vulnerability. The mask never slipped. Victoria did not deny it. She did not even seem particularly sorry. "You were never here," she said. "I needed someone who was actually present, someone who saw me instead of seeing through me." The words cut deeper than he wanted to admit, because they were true. He had stopped seeing her years ago. Stopped seeing anyone, really. People had become functions to him, tools to be utilized, problems to be solved. Somewhere along the way, he had forgotten how to connect with anyone as a human being. The divorce was quick and quiet. Expensive, of course, because Victoria's lawyers were good and Jordan did not fight them. He just wanted it over, wanted to stop being reminded of his failure. After Victoria, he stopped trying to have relationships. He dated occasionally, women who were attracted to his money or his power, women who performed affection without ever actually feeling it. Each relationship lasted a few months at most before the emptiness became unbearable, and he ended it. He told himself he was better off alone. He told himself that connections were distractions. He told himself that his work was enough, that achievement was enough, that success was its own reward. The loneliness told him something different, but he had learned to ignore it. He developed habits to cope, working 18-hour days so he did not have time to think, traveling constantly so he never had to be still, speaking in German when he wanted to express frustration because saying cruel things in another language made them feel less real. He did not think about the people he dismissed or the feelings he hurt. They were functions, tasks, obstacles or tools, nothing more, until tonight. Until a cleaning lady with a PhD looked at him like she saw exactly who he was. And instead of turning away in disgust, she had simply stated the truth. "To you, I am useless." The words kept echoing in his mind as he sat in the conference room after she left. He thought about all the people he had dismissed over the years, the assistants he had burned through, the employees he had laid off without a second thought, the maintenance staff he had literally never noticed. How many of them had stories like Keisha's? How many of them were invisible not because they lacked value, but because he had never bothered to look? "Sir?" Marcus's voice was uncertain. "Are you all right?" "No," Jordan admitted, surprising himself with the honesty. "I do not think I have been all right in a very long time. The Stuttgart report. I could call the intern and ask where they moved it. It is in my office. 3rd drawer, left side." She was right. Jordan stood, suddenly restless. The cleaning lady was right about my filing system, about the coffee maker, probably about everything else she mentioned. The affairs? Marcus's voice squeaked slightly. Jordan almost laughed. "Probably about those too. I will have HR look into it discreetly. But Marcus, that is not the point. The point is, she noticed all of that while being invisible, while I walked past her every day for 2 years and never once wondered who she was. What kind of person does that make me?" Marcus hesitated, clearly uncertain how to answer a question that seemed rhetorical but might not be. "I think it makes you human, sir. People do not usually notice the maintenance staff. It is not personal, but it is personal." Jordan walked to the window, staring out at the New York skyline. To them, it is personal. Every time someone looks through them, every time someone treats them like furniture, that is a person deciding they do not matter. I have done that thousands of times. To her. To everyone like her. So, what are you going to do about it? Jordan turned back to face his assistant. First, I'm going to find out if she will actually show up on Thursday. Then I'm going to offer her a job that actually uses her qualifications. And then I'm going to figure out how to be the kind of person who does not need a humiliating confrontation to remember that other people are human. Marcus nodded slowly. That sounds like a good start. It is barely a start. Jordan headed for the door, pausing with his hand on the frame. Marcus, what is the name of the night security guard? The one who works the lobby entrance. Marcus blinked. I have no idea, sir. Find out. Find out all their names. The security staff, the maintenance workers, the cafeteria employees. Everyone. I want a list on my desk by Friday. Yes, sir. Jordan left the conference room, heading for his office to find the Stuttgart report exactly where Keisha had said it would be. He had a lot of work to do. Not the kind of work he usually did. Not acquisitions or contracts or negotiations. The work of becoming human again. That night, both of them went home to their separate lives, their separate spaces, their separate silences. Keisha returned to her small apartment in Washington Heights. One bedroom, barely enough room for a bed and a desk and the books she refused to give up even when she could not afford them. The walls were thin enough that she could hear her neighbors arguing in Spanish. The radiator clanked like something dying whenever the heat kicked on. But it was hers, the only space in the world that belonged to her alone. She sat at her desk and pulled out the folder she kept hidden in the bottom drawer. Inside was her dissertation, 247 pages of research that no one would ever read. Alongside it was her diploma, the one physical proof that she had once been someone who mattered. Dr. Keisha Monroe, it said. The words used to make her proud. Now they just made her sad. She thought about Thursday, about Jordan Lewis and his unexpected invitation, about the possibility that something might finally change. Then she thought about all the other possibilities that had turned out to be illusions. The academic jobs that never materialized, the interviews that led nowhere, the momentary hope that always gave way to reality. She put the folder back in the drawer and went to bed. Across the city, Jordan Lewis entered his penthouse apartment. 4,000 square feet of modern luxury, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, art on the walls that cost more than most people made in a lifetime, and silence, complete, suffocating silence. He poured himself a drink and stood by the window, watching the lights of the city sparkle like promises that never got kept. Somewhere out there, Keisha Monroe was probably assuming the worst about him, probably expecting him to cancel Thursday's dinner or show up and disappoint her, or be exactly the kind of person she had every reason to believe he was. He wanted to prove her wrong. He wanted to be better than the man who had casually insulted her without a second thought. He wanted to be the person his father had hoped he would become, someone who did good instead of just making money. But wanting was not the same as being, and Jordan Lewis had a lifetime of habits to overcome. He finished his drink and went to bed alone, as he always did. Neither of them slept well that night. They both dreamed of conference rooms and German words, and the possibility that tomorrow might be different from today. We are just getting started. I have shown you who they are. I have shown you what brought them to that conference room, what they lost, what they hunger for. Now I need to show you what happens when two broken people decide to take a chance on each other. But before I continue, I need you to do something for me. I need you to hit that subscribe button right now. Click that notification bell so you do not miss what comes next. Because this story is about to get complicated in ways neither of them expected. Drop a comment telling me what you think about Keisha and Jordan so far. Do you believe people can change? Do you think Jordan deserves a chance to prove himself? Do you think Keisha should risk trusting someone who has already shown he can be cruel? Your engagement matters. It tells me these stories resonate. It helps me know what you want to see more of. And most importantly, it builds a community of people who believe in second chances, hidden depths, and the courage it takes to let someone truly see you. Now let us find out what happens on Thursday. Thursday arrived the way significant days always do, slowly at first, then all at once. Keisha spent the morning convincing herself not to go. She had 100 reasons. He was her employer technically. He had insulted her 3 days ago. He was a billionaire who probably invited cleaning staff to dinner all the time as a way of alleviating guilt before forgetting about them entirely. But underneath all those reasons was the real one, the one she did not want to admit. She was afraid to hope. Hope had betrayed her too many times. Hope had told her that her grandmother would survive the cancer. Hope had told her that academic jobs would materialize. Hope had told her that things would get better, that the universe rewarded hard work and intelligence and perseverance. Hope had lied. So she sat in her apartment at 4 in the afternoon, still in sweatpants, still telling herself she was not going to show up. Then she thought about her grandmother. "You must not let them make you small," Elsa used to say. "The world will try to shrink you. People will try to tell you what you are worth. But you decide. You always decide." Keisha got up and started getting ready. She did not own much that was appropriate for a dinner with a billionaire. Her wardrobe consisted mostly of cleaning uniforms and the comfortable clothes she wore on her days off. But buried in the back of her closet was a dress she had bought for her dissertation defense. Navy blue. Simple. The kind of dress that said she took herself seriously without trying too hard. She put it on and looked at herself in the mirror. For the first time in 3 years, she saw someone who might still become something. The restaurant she had chosen was a small Ethiopian place in Brooklyn. Mescarum. Her grandmother had discovered it 20 years ago and had taken Keisha there for every birthday, every graduation, every moment worth celebrating. It was not fancy. The tablecloths were vinyl. The silverware was mismatched. The menu was handwritten and changed depending on what the owner's mother felt like cooking that day. But the food was extraordinary. And more importantly, it was hers. A space where she felt comfortable, where the power dynamic would be at least slightly equalized. She arrived 15 minutes early and found Jordan already there. He was sitting at a corner table, looking profoundly out of place in his expensive suit. The other diners, mostly Ethiopian families and young couples on dates, kept glancing at him with curiosity. He did not seem to notice. He was studying the menu with the kind of intense focus he probably brought to merger negotiations. "You are early," Keisha said, sliding into the chair across from him. "So are you." Jordan looked up, and something in his expression softened when he saw her. "I was not sure you would come. I almost did not." "What changed your mind?" "My grandmother. She used to bring me here." It felt wrong to let her favorite restaurant become associated with cowardice. Jordan absorbed this, nodding slowly. "I am glad you came, and I am glad you chose this place. It is not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "I do not know. Something designed to make me uncomfortable, maybe. This just feels like somewhere you actually want to be." "It is." Keisha picked up her menu, though she already knew what she would order. The same thing she always ordered. "I wanted us to meet somewhere that was mine. Somewhere you could not control the environment." "That is fair." Jordan set down his menu. "I should tell you, I have never eaten Ethiopian food before." "Never?" "My dining experiences tend toward the predictable. Business dinners at expensive restaurants where the food is secondary to the negotiation happening over it. I cannot remember the last time I ate somewhere because I genuinely wanted to taste what they were serving. That is incredibly sad." "I know." Jordan's voice carried a note of self-awareness that surprised her. "A lot of things about my life are incredibly sad when I actually examine them, which I have been doing since Monday night." The waiter arrived, an older Ethiopian man named Solomon, who had known Keisha since she was a teenager. He raised an eyebrow at her companion but said nothing, simply taking their orders with the practiced efficiency of someone who had seen stranger pairings in his time. After he left, Jordan leaned forward slightly. "I want to apologize again. Properly this time. What I said on Monday, the assumption behind it, that was not a momentary lapse. That was who I have become. Someone who looks at people and sees functions instead of humans. Someone who assumes that anyone in a service position must be less intelligent, less educated, less worthy of basic respect. I have been that person for years, and I did not even realize it until you forced me to see it." Keisha studied him carefully. She had expected excuses, justifications, the kind of performative apology that powerful people offered when they got caught being their worst selves. But this felt different. This felt like someone genuinely reckoning with who they had become. "Why do you think you became that person?" Jordan was quiet for a moment, considering the question seriously. "I think it happened gradually. When you are successful, people start treating you differently. They laugh at jokes that are not funny. They agree with ideas that are not good. They make you feel like your opinions matter more than they do, simply because you have money. After a while, you start believing it. You start thinking that the deference is earned, that you deserve to be treated as more important than everyone else. And once you believe that, it becomes very easy to treat other people as less important than they are." That is a remarkably honest answer. "I have had 4 days to think about it." and I have not liked most of what I found. The food arrived. Injera spread across a large platter, topped with colorful portions of Dora Wat and Tibbs and lentils and vegetables. Jordan looked at it with a mixture of curiosity and uncertainty. You eat with your hands, Keisha explained. Tear off a piece of the bread and use it to scoop up the food. No utensils? No utensils. It is communal. Shared. The opposite of everything about a fancy business dinner. Jordan nodded and followed her lead, somewhat awkwardly at first, then with growing confidence. His expression when he tasted the Dora Wat was almost comical, a widening of the eyes, a slight pause, and then something that looked like genuine delight. This is incredible. I told you. Why do people not know about this? Why is every business dinner not here instead of those pretentious French restaurants where you cannot pronounce anything on the menu? Because rich people like exclusivity. They want to eat at places other people cannot afford. It makes them feel special. I think I have been confusing expensive with good for a very long time. You have been confusing a lot of things for a long time. It was a sharp observation, but Jordan did not flinch from it. He just nodded. You are probably right. Can I ask you something? That depends on what it is. Why linguistics? Why German specifically? Of all the things you could have studied, why did you choose that? Keisha had not expected the question. She had expected him to focus on business, on the consultant position he had mentioned, on things that were useful to him. But this was personal. This was about who she was, not what she could do for him. My grandmother, she said. She escaped East Germany in 1961. She never talked about how. I think it was traumatic enough that the words would not come. But she talked about everything else. The language, the literature, the way German could express emotions that English did not have words for. She taught me the language as a child, and I fell in love with it, with the precision of it, with the way compound words could capture entire concepts that would take English a full sentence to explain. Like what? Keisha thought for a moment. Weltschmerz, world pain. The feeling of sadness you get when you realize that the world will never match your ideals. English does not have a single word for that. German does. World pain, Jordan repeated slowly. I think I have been feeling that for years without knowing what to call it. Most people have. That is why I find linguistics fascinating. The way language shapes thought, limits it, expands it. The words we have determine the emotions we can name. And the emotions we can name are the only ones we can properly understand. You should be teaching this to someone. Jordan's voice carried genuine frustration. You should be standing in front of a classroom full of students who do not know how lucky they are to learn from you. Instead, you are cleaning conference rooms because the system failed you. The system did not fail me. The system worked exactly as designed. It is designed to extract maximum labor for minimum compensation. It is designed to make education expensive and jobs scarce. It is designed to keep people like me desperate enough to accept whatever work is available. The system is functioning perfectly. It just was not designed to help people like me succeed. Jordan set down the piece of bread he had been holding. I never thought about it that way. Why would you? The system works for you. When you are on the winning side of something, you do not usually examine its flaws. Is that why you accepted this dinner? To educate me on my privilege? Keisha almost smiled. Partly, but also because I wanted to see if you were capable of hearing it. Most people in your position get defensive when someone points out their advantages. They start listing all the hard work they did, all the obstacles they overcame, all the reasons their success was earned rather than facilitated by circumstances. You have not done that yet. I thought about it, Jordan admitted. My first instinct was to explain all the ways my success was legitimate. But then I remembered what you said in the conference room, about being accurate from my perspective. And I realized that my perspective has been very limited for a very long time. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, sharing the platter, occasionally reaching for the same piece of injera and awkwardly adjusting. Tell me about the Berlin deal, Keisha said eventually. The one you mentioned needing a translator consultant for. Jordan visibly relaxed at the shift to familiar territory. We are trying to expand into the German market. Manufacturing partnerships with 3 companies in Berlin and Stuttgart. The negotiations have been difficult. There are cultural differences I do not fully understand, and my current translation team is focused on accuracy rather than nuance. They translate what is said, but they miss what is meant. German business culture is different from American business culture, Keisha said. More formal, More relationship-based. Americans want to close deals quickly. Germans want to build trust first. If your team is pushing for speed, they are probably creating resistance. That is exactly what is happening. How did you know? Because I spent 4 years studying how German linguistic patterns reflect cultural values. Directness is valued, but so is respect for process. Efficiency is admired, but not at the expense of thoroughness. If you are approaching these negotiations the way you approach American deals, you are probably offending people without realizing it. Jordan leaned back in his chair, something like wonder crossing his face. I have been trying to figure out what was going wrong for 3 months. I have hired consultants, brought in experts, had my team analyze every conversation, and you just diagnosed the problem in 30 seconds. It is not complicated if you understand the culture. But understanding culture requires actually studying it, not just hiring translators who know the vocabulary. Would you consider working on this deal, not as a cleaning staff member, as a consultant, a real one, with compensation that reflects your actual expertise? Keisha had been waiting for this offer. She had prepared herself for it, had considered every possible angle. If I take that job, she said carefully, it cannot be charity. It has to be because I am genuinely the best person for the work. I will not be your feel-good story about how you rescued a cleaning lady who turned out to be smart. It is not charity. Jordan's voice was firm. I have been looking for someone with exactly your qualifications for months. The fact that I found you by insulting you in German is embarrassing and ironic, but it does not change the fact that you are qualified. Probably overqualified. I should be worried that you will take this job, fix the Berlin deal, and then leave for something better. Keisha considered this. I have one condition. Name it. I want to keep cleaning for a while. A few shifts a week. On my own terms. Jordan's confusion was evident. Why? You would not have to. Because I do not want to forget who I was when no one was watching. That is when you find out what someone is really made of. I spent 2 years being invisible. I learned things in that invisibility that I do not want to lose. If I jump straight from cleaning to executive consulting, I might start to believe I was always meant to be in the boardroom. I might forget what it felt like to be dismissed. I want to remember. I want that humility to stay with me. Jordan was quiet for a long moment. That might be the most thoughtful thing anyone has ever said to me. Your standards must be very low. They are. He almost smiled. But I am hoping to raise them. They finished dinner. Jordan insisted on paying, which Keisha allowed only after he agreed to let her pay the next time. The assumption that there would be a next time hung in the air between them, acknowledged but not examined. Outside the restaurant, Brooklyn was doing its evening routine. Families walking, music playing from open windows, the rumble of the subway beneath their feet. Can I ask you something personal? Jordan said. That depends on what it is. When your grandmother was sick, when everything was falling apart, did you ever think about asking for help? From the university? From anyone? Keisha was quiet for a moment, the memory still sharp. I did ask. I asked Columbia for emergency funding. They gave me $2,000. I asked my colleagues for help. Most of them were struggling themselves. I asked the insurance company to reconsider their denials. They said no 17 times. I asked everyone I could think of, but when you are falling, most people step out of the way. It is easier than catching you. Jordan nodded slowly. I have been the person who stepped out of the way. More times than I can count. I told myself it was not my responsibility, that everyone has their own problems. That charity was for foundations and non-profits, not individuals. And now? Now, I think I was just making excuses. It is easy to give money to a foundation and feel good about yourself. It is harder to actually see the people who need help and do something about it. Keisha studied him in the streetlight. He looked different than he had in the conference room. Smaller, somehow. More human. You are not what I expected, she said. Neither are you. He paused. Can I see you again? Not for business. Just to talk. The question hung in the air. Keisha felt the familiar urge to protect herself, to say no, to retreat behind the wall she had built over 3 years of disappointment. But something in his voice, something in the way he had listened all night, made her hesitate. Thursday, she said. Same restaurant. I will let you practice eating with your hands. Jordan's smile was unexpected, genuine. It transformed his face in a way that made him look younger, less guarded. I would like that. They parted ways on the corner. Jordan heading toward the subway station because Keisha had refused to let him call a car. "If you want to understand people," she had said, "you have to move through the world the way they do." Keisha watched him disappear down the stairs, a billionaire in a $2,000 suit descending into the New York subway system for what was probably the first time in a decade. She did not know what to make of him. He was not the man she had expected, but that did not mean he was the man she could trust. She walked home through Brooklyn, thinking about German words for emotions that English could not capture. Sehnsucht, a longing for something you cannot name, a desire for a state of being that you may never have experienced, but somehow know is missing from your life. That was what she felt, had felt for 3 years, a longing for something she could not quite define, and for the first time in a long time, she wondered if maybe she was about to find it. The following weeks reshaped both of their lives in ways neither had anticipated. Keisha started her consulting work on the Berlin deal 3 days after that first dinner. She was given an office on the 49th floor, 3 levels below Jordan's, professional distance carefully maintained. The first day, she wore a blazer she had purchased from a consignment store. It was not expensive, but it was respectable. She walked through the halls she had cleaned for 2 years, passing people who had never looked at her before, and who now nodded in acknowledgement. The experience was disorienting. She was the same person, the same mind, the same education, but now she was visible. Now she mattered. That first week, she sat in on 3 meetings with the German partners. The problems were immediately apparent. Jordan's team was approaching the negotiations like a transaction. They had numbers and projections and timelines. What they did not have was any understanding of why the German executives kept resisting terms that seemed perfectly reasonable. After the 3rd meeting, Keisha asked Jordan to stay behind. "You are offending them," she said. "How?" "You keep interrupting their pauses." In German business culture, silence is not uncomfortable. It is thoughtful. When Herr Muller stops talking, he is not waiting for you to fill the space. He is considering what you said. When you immediately jump in with another point, you are signaling that you do not respect his deliberation. Jordan looked genuinely surprised. "I thought the silences meant he was confused." "They mean the opposite. They mean he is taking you seriously. But every time you interrupt, you undermine that respect." "What else am I doing wrong?" "You are smiling too much." "Smiling is wrong?" "In this context, yes. Americans smile to build rapport. Germans are suspicious of smiling during serious discussions. It makes you seem like you are not taking the negotiation seriously, or worse, like you are trying to manipulate them. So I should be more serious and let the silences breathe." "Exactly, and you should slow down. You are speaking at American pace. German business communication is more deliberate. When you rush through points, it suggests you have not thought them through carefully." Jordan shook his head slowly. "I have been sabotaging these negotiations for 3 months without even knowing it. You have been approaching them with an American framework. That works for American deals. It does not work here. Will you sit in on the next meeting? Actually participate? That is what you are paying me for." "No, I am paying you to advise. Participating is different. Participating means they see you as part of the team. It means your credibility is on the line alongside mine." Keisha considered this. "If I participate, I do it my way. No interrupting me. No contradicting me in front of them. If you disagree with something I say, we discuss it privately afterward." "Agreed. And you follow my lead on the cultural elements. If I tell you to stop talking, you stop talking." Jordan almost smiled. "I do not think anyone has told me to stop talking in a very long time." "Then you are overdue." The next meeting with the German partners was different. Keisha introduced herself in flawless German, explaining her background and her role. She saw Herr Muller's expression shift from polite wariness to genuine interest. "Sie haben an der Columbia promoviert? You completed your doctorate at Columbia?" "Ja, in Germanischer Linguistik. Meine Großmutter kam aus Dresden." "Yes, in Germanic linguistics. My grandmother was from Dresden." "Dresden." Muller nodded slowly. "Eine wunderschöne Stadt. Vor dem Krieg. A beautiful city. Before the war. Sie hat mir viel darüber erzählt. Die Frauenkirche. Der Zwinger. Die Kultur. Die verloren ging." She told me much about it. The Frauenkirche. The Zwinger. The culture that was lost. Something shifted in the room. Keisha could feel it. By acknowledging the history, by speaking in their language, by demonstrating genuine understanding of German culture, she had done something that months of negotiation had not accomplished. She had built trust. The meeting lasted 2 hours. Jordan mostly listened, following Keisha's lead, allowing silences to breathe, keeping his expression serious when the discussion turned to business terms. By the end, Herr Muller was nodding. Ich glaube, wir können zusammenarbeiten, he said. I believe we can work together. It was not a signed contract. It was not a closed deal. But it was progress. More progress than they had made in 3 months of previous negotiations. Afterward, in the empty conference room, Jordan turned to Keisha with something like awe on his face. You did that in one meeting where you mostly talked about Dresden and the Frauenkirche. I built a bridge. The business terms will follow once the relationship is established. I have been trying to close this deal with spreadsheets and projections. You closed it with stories about your grandmother. That is what I have been trying to tell you. German business culture is relationship-based. They need to know who they are partnering with. Numbers can lie. People reveal themselves. Jordan leaned against the table, shaking his head. I think I have been approaching everything in my life wrong. Not everything. Your numbers are good. Your projections are solid. You just needed someone to translate more than words. The weeks continued. Keisha split her time between consulting work and occasional cleaning shifts. She kept her promise to herself. 2 evenings a week, she put on the blue uniform and cleaned the executive floors. Some people found it strange. They whispered about the consultant who also mopped floors. But Keisha did not care. The cleaning kept her grounded. It reminded her of who she had been and who she still was. One evening, she was vacuuming the 49th floor when Jordan appeared. You do not have to do this anymore, he said. I keep telling you that, and I keep telling you why I do. But you are a consultant now. You have an office. You are on the Berlin deal team. And before I was those things, I was this. Keisha gestured to the uniform. I do not want to pretend that part of my life did not happen. I do not want to act like I've always been the person who sits in boardrooms and speaks German with executives. I was invisible for 2 years. That taught me things that being visible never could. What did it teach you? To pay attention. To notice what people reveal when they think no one is watching. To understand that every person has a story, even the ones who never get asked to tell it. Jordan was quiet for a moment. Can I help? Help how? Help clean. Just this, once. I want to understand what you see. Keisha stared at him. You want to help me vacuum the executive floor? Yes. You own this building. I know. People will think you have lost your mind. Probably. Jordan's voice was serious. But I am trying to become a different kind of person, and I do not think I can do that by staying in my comfortable spaces. I think I have to actually experience what other people experience. Keisha considered this. It was either the most genuine thing she had ever seen from a wealthy person or the most elaborate performance. She decided to find out which. The supply closet is down the hall. There should be an extra vacuum. Jordan returned 5 minutes later, vacuum in hand, looking profoundly uncertain about what to do with it. I have not actually used one of these since college. It is not complicated. Push it forward. Pull it back. Try not to run over the cord. They vacuumed the floor together. Jordan's technique was terrible. He kept missing spots and getting the cord tangled. Keisha had to show him twice how to properly work around furniture. But he did it. A billionaire in a designer suit, pushing a vacuum across floors he owned, learning what it felt like to be one of the people he had never noticed. When they finished, they sat in the empty break room drinking bad coffee from the machine that was due to fail in about a week. My back hurts, Jordan said. I did 1 floor. You do this for hours. Multiple floors. Multiple buildings sometimes. How do you not collapse at the end of every shift? You get used to it. Your body adapts. After a while, the pain becomes background noise. Jordan stared into his coffee cup. I have never in my life experienced background pain. Every discomfort I have ever felt has been immediately addressed. Trainers, massage therapists, whatever I needed to make it stop. That is the difference between being rich and being poor. When you are rich, pain is an emergency. When you are poor, pain is a constant. I think that might be the saddest thing you have said yet. It is not sad. It is just true. Sadness would require me to wish things were different. I stopped wishing a long time ago. Now I just deal with what is. Jordan set down his coffee cup. I do not want you to stop wishing. I do not want you to be so ground down by reality that you forget what you actually want. What makes you think I have forgotten? Because the first did. I forgot what I actually wanted years ago. I replaced it with what I was supposed to want. Success, money, power, all the things that were supposed to make me happy, but never did. And I think somewhere along the way, you did the same thing. Keisha was quiet for a long moment. I wanted to be a professor. I wanted to stand in front of students and share everything I know. I wanted to write books about language and thought and how words shape reality. I wanted to make my grandmother proud. Those are all past tense, Jordan observed quietly, because they are in the past. What I want now is simpler. I want stability. I want to stop worrying about rent. I want to sleep through the night without wondering if I will be able to pay my bills. What about beyond stability? Once you have that, what do you want? The question caught her off guard. No one had asked her that in years, not even herself. I do not know, she admitted. I stopped thinking that far ahead. Maybe it is time to start again. They sat in silence for a while, the break room humming with the refrigerator's constant drone. Something had shifted between them, something neither of them was ready to name. Can I tell you something? Jordan said eventually. That depends on what it is. I have not felt this real in years. Talking to you, learning from you, pushing that ridiculous vacuum across floors I have never even thought about before. I feel more like a human being than I have since I can remember. That is just because I do not treat you like a net worth. Maybe. Or maybe it is because you see me clearly. You see everything I have done wrong, all the ways I have failed to be a decent person, and you talk to me anyway. You do not pretend I am better than I am. But you do not give up on the possibility that I could be. Keisha looked at him. Really looked. For 2 years, she had seen Jordan Lewis as a type, the arrogant billionaire, the man who did not see her, the symbol of everything that was wrong with a system that valued wealth over humanity. But types are not people. And the man sitting across from her, tired and uncomfortable and earnest in a way that seemed entirely genuine, was not a type. He was someone trying to change. And that was harder than staying the same. That took more courage than she had given him credit for. It is getting late, she said. I should go home. Can I walk you to the subway? You do not have to do that. I know. I want to. They walked through the empty building, past the security desk where Jordan stopped to greet the night guard by name. Thomas, he said, how is your daughter doing with the college applications? Thomas looked startled but pleased. She got into 3 schools so far, Mr. Lewis. Still waiting on her top choice. Let me know if she needs a recommendation letter. Columbia was after my time, but I still have contacts. Keisha watched this exchange in silence. When they were outside, she said, You learned his name. I learned everyone's names. You were right. I'd been walking past these people for years without ever seeing them. It was easy to change once I realized I wanted to. That is the hard part for most people, the wanting to change. It was the hard part for me too. Until Monday night. They walked to the subway in comfortable silence. The city was quieter now, the late hour emptying the streets of everyone except the people who had nowhere else to be. At the station entrance, they paused. Same time Thursday? Jordan asked. Same time Thursday, Keisha agreed. She descended into the station, feeling his eyes on her back. Something was happening between them, something neither of them was ready to name or acknowledge. But for the first time in 3 years, Keisha felt the stirring of something that might have been hope. She did not trust it yet, but she did not push it away either. The dinners continued. Every Thursday, same restaurant, same corner table. Solomon started automatically bringing them their usual orders, raising an eyebrow when they showed up together week after week but saying nothing. They talked about everything. Jordan's childhood, Keisha's grandmother, the pressures of building an empire, the devastation of watching someone you love die slowly, the loneliness that both of them carried, different in origin but similar in weight. 4 weeks into their Thursday routine, Jordan made a confession. I used to think loneliness was a failure of willpower, that people who felt lonely just were not trying hard enough to connect. Now I understand it is more complicated than that. You can be surrounded by people and still be completely alone. You can have everything society says you should want and still feel like something essential is missing. What is missing for you? Someone who sees me, not the money, not the company, not the version of myself I present to the world. Just me, flawed and uncertain, and trying to be better than I was. I see you, Keisha said quietly. I know. That is why I keep showing up. They looked at each other across the table. The air between them had been charged for weeks, something building that neither of them wanted to acknowledge. Keisha, Jordan started, then stopped. Yes, I do not want to complicate things. You work for my company. There is a power imbalance. I am aware of how this could be perceived. How could it be perceived? Like I am pursuing someone who feels obligated to respond positively, like I am taking advantage of a situation I created. Is that what you are doing? No, at least I do not think so, but I want to be careful. I want to make sure that whatever happens between us, you never feel like your job depends on it. You never feel like you have to say yes to anything because of who I am. Keisha was quiet for a moment. I quit, she said. What? I quit. Effective immediately. I no longer work for Lewis Industries. Jordan stared at her. You cannot just quit. I just did. I will send the formal resignation tomorrow. But as of this moment, you are not my employer. There is no power imbalance. There is just us. Keisha, I did not mean you should quit. The Berlin deal needs you. The company needs you. The Berlin deal is almost closed. You do not need me for the final signatures, and I can find other consulting work. I have references now, real ones, not just a PhD that nobody respects. Why are you doing this? Because you asked me what I wanted, beyond stability, beyond survival. And I realized I do want something else. I want this, whatever this is, but I do not want it to be complicated by questions about power and obligation. So I am removing the complication. Jordan was silent for a long moment. That is the most dramatic thing anyone has ever done for me. It is not for you. It is for both of us. If we are going to figure out what this is, I want to do it on equal footing. Not as your employee. Not as someone who owes you anything. Just as a person who chooses to be here because I want to be. And do you want to be here? I keep showing up every Thursday, do I not? Jordan reached across the table and took her hand. It was the first time they had touched since that night in the conference room. The contact was electric, sending a current through both of them. I do not know what I am doing, Jordan admitted. I have not done this in years. I have not let anyone close enough to matter since Victoria. I have forgotten how to be vulnerable with another person. I do not know what I am doing either. I have spent 3 years building walls, protecting myself from hope, refusing to let anyone close enough to disappoint me. So we are both terrified. Completely. Then we are equally matched. They sat there, holding hands across a table covered in empty plates and crumpled napkins. Outside, Brooklyn continued its endless rhythm. Inside, something new was beginning. I need to pause here and speak directly to you. We have reached a turning point in this story. 2 people who had every reason to stay guarded, to protect themselves, to maintain the walls they built from years of disappointment and betrayal, are choosing to take a chance on each other. If you have ever been afraid to let someone in, if you have ever wondered whether vulnerability was worth the risk, if you have ever stood at the edge of something new and terrifying and had to decide whether to step forward or retreat, this story is for you. I need you to hit that like button right now. Not for me. For everyone who has ever taken a chance on something uncertain. For everyone who has chosen hope over fear. Drop a comment telling me your story. Have you ever let down your walls for someone? Have you ever been the person who helped someone else let down theirs? Subscribe and turn on notifications because what comes next will test everything Keisha and Jordan have built. The real challenges are just beginning. Now let me continue. The weeks that followed were a careful negotiation between 2 people learning to trust each other. Keisha did not actually quit. Jordan refused to accept her resignation. They compromised. She would stay on as a consultant for the Berlin deal, but only until it closed. After that, she would decide what she wanted to do. No pressure, no expectations. But the professional arrangement was secondary to what was actually developing between them. They saw each other outside of work. Dinners became lunches, became weekend afternoons spent walking through parts of the city Jordan had never explored. Keisha took him to the bookstore in Brooklyn where she used to read for hours when she could not afford to buy anything. She showed him the park where her grandmother used to walk. She introduced him to the world she had built during her invisible years. Jordan took her to his world too. Not the business dinners and charity galas. The real world. The architecture tours he secretly loved. The jazz club, where he sometimes went alone just to listen. The rooftop garden at Lewis Industries, where he retreated when everything became too much. "You come here when you are overwhelmed," Keisha observed one evening as they stood on the rooftop, the city spreading below them like a circuit board of light. "I come here when I need to remember that there is more to life than quarterly reports and shareholder meetings. That out there, people are living actual lives, falling in love, raising children, creating art, doing all the things I forgot how to do somewhere along the way." "What made you forget?" "Success, I think. When you achieve a certain level of success, everyone wants something from you. Every relationship becomes transactional. Every conversation has an agenda. After a while, you stop believing anyone could want you just for who you are. You start assuming everyone wants what you can provide. I do not want anything you can provide. I know. That is why I trust you." She turned to look at him. The city lights reflected in his eyes. He looked younger than his 34 years, hopeful in a way she had not seen before. Something built in the air between them. The weeks of careful distance. The conversations that circled closer and closer to something neither of them wanted to name. "Jordan," she started, but he interrupted her. "Can I kiss you?" The question was so direct, so unexpectedly vulnerable, that it took her off guard. "You are asking permission?" "Of course. I am not going to assume anything. If you do not want this, if I have misread the situation, tell me. I will not mention it again." Keisha looked at him. At this man who had insulted her in German 7 weeks ago, who had dismissed her as useless without a second thought, who had since learned to see her, to value her, to treat her as an equal in every way that mattered. People can change. She had not believed that before. She believed it now. "Yes," she said. "You can kiss me." The kiss was gentle at first. Tentative. Two people who had been hurt before, who were terrified of being hurt again, finding their way toward each other. Then it deepened, and the walls they had both built over years of disappointment and betrayal began to crumble. When they finally pulled apart, Jordan was smiling. A real smile, the kind that transformed his face into something almost boyish. "I have been wanting to do that for weeks. Why did you wait so long?" "Because I needed to make sure it was real, that I was not just attracted to you because you challenged me. That this was not just novelty or guilt or some complicated attempt to prove I am not the person who insulted you in that conference room." "And what did you decide?" "That I have never felt this way about anyone. That when I am with you, I am more myself than I have ever been. That you make me want to be the kind of person who deserves you. You are not there yet. I know. I have years of selfishness to undo. But I am trying. Does that count for something?" "It counts for everything." They stood on the rooftop as the city hummed below them, two people who had found each other across an impossible divide. Neither of them knew what came next. Neither of them could predict the challenges that waited. But for that moment, on that rooftop, with the city lights spread before them like a promise, it was enough to know that they were not alone anymore. Something had changed, and neither of them wanted to change it back. The relationship evolved over the following months. It was not easy. They came from different worlds, had different experiences, carried different wounds. Keisha still struggled with the wealth disparity. She refused to let Jordan pay for things. She insisted on contributing equally to dinners even when her contribution was a fraction of what he could have spent without noticing. "You do not have to prove anything," Jordan told her one evening after she insisted on paying for pizza that they both knew was not quite as good as what he could have ordered. "I am not proving anything. I am maintaining myself. The minute I start letting you pay for everything, I become someone who depends on you. And I have spent too long building my independence to give it up now." Independence does not mean refusing help. It does not mean accepting help I do not need either. "I have enough money for pizza, Jordan. Let me buy you pizza." He let her buy him pizza. They fought sometimes, about small things that were really about big things, about his tendency to try to solve problems with money when what she needed was to be heard, about her tendency to push him away when she felt vulnerable. After one particularly difficult argument about whether Jordan should have offered to pay off her student loans without asking first, they sat in her small apartment in tense silence. "I was trying to help," Jordan said. "I did not ask for help. You should not have to ask. You should know that I want to help, that I have the resources to make your life easier, and I want to use them. That is the problem. You want to make my life easier. You are not asking whether I want my life to be easier. Why would you want your life to be harder than it needs to be?" Keisha took a breath. trying to find the words for something she had never had to explain. Because the hard parts made me who I am. The struggle taught me things that ease never could. If you erase every difficulty in my life, if you smooth over every rough edge, I am not me anymore. I am just someone who got rescued. And I do not want to be rescued. I want to be partnered. Jordan was quiet for a long moment. I never thought about it that way. I know you did not. That is why I'm telling you. How do I help without rescuing? Ask. Before you fix something, ask if I want it fixed. Before you pay for something, ask if I want it paid for. Treat me like an adult who gets to make decisions about her own life. That sounds simple when you say it. It is simple. It is just different from what you are used to. Jordan nodded slowly. He was learning. It was taking time, but he was learning. I am sorry, he said. I should have asked. Yes, you should have. Will you forgive me? Keisha looked at him. At this man who kept making mistakes but kept trying to correct them. Who kept showing up, kept listening, kept being willing to hear difficult truths about himself. I will forgive you, she said. But do not do it again. I will try. I cannot promise I will not mess up. But I can promise I will keep trying. That is all I am asking. They made up. They always made up. Because underneath the conflicts and the complications, something real was building between them. Something neither of them had expected to find. Love. They did not say the word yet. It was too soon. Too frightening. Too loaded with possibility and risk. But it was there. Growing in the spaces between arguments. Deepening with every conversation that went somewhere real. Becoming something neither of them could ignore. 3 months into the relationship, Jordan made an announcement. He was sitting across from Keisha at their usual restaurant, looking more nervous than she had seen him since that first dinner. I have been thinking about something, he said. That sounds ominous. Not ominous. Just significant. I have been restructuring my company, delegating more responsibilities to my executive team, and I have been thinking about what I want to do with the resources I have. What did you decide? I want to start a foundation, not the usual kind. Not galas and photo opportunities and tax deductions dressed up as philanthropy. A real one. One that does actual good. What kind of good? Keisha was watching him carefully. I want to help people like you. Academics who face financial crises that interrupt their careers. Brilliant people who end up cleaning offices because the system failed them. I want to create emergency funding, grants, support structures that catch people before they fall. You want to start this because of me. I want to start this because of what I learned from you. Because I realize that there are thousands of people out there with PhDs and potential, and they are invisible because no one bothered to build a safety net. I have the resources to build one. Why should I not do it? Keisha was quiet for a moment, processing. You are serious about this. Completely serious. I have already talked to lawyers, started the paperwork. I wanted to call it the Mueller Foundation, after your grandmother, if you will let me. Keisha felt tears threatening. She blinked them back. You want to name it after my grandmother? She taught you. She raised you. She instilled in you everything that made you who you are. Without her, I never would have met you. This seems like the least I can do to honor that. Jordan, that is. She could not finish the sentence. The tears came anyway. Jordan reached across the table and took her hand. There is one more thing, he said. I do not want to run it alone. I want you to lead it, to design the programs, to decide who gets helped and how. You understand what people going through this actually need. I just have the money. You have the knowledge. You want me to run a foundation. I want you to run your foundation. I will provide the resources. You provide the vision. We build it together. Keisha stared at him. A year ago, she had been cleaning his conference room, invisible, dismissed, convinced that her education meant nothing and her future held nothing but survival. Now he was offering her the chance to help people who were exactly where she had been, to prevent others from falling the way she had fallen, to transform her struggle into something that mattered. I do not know what to say. Say yes. She looked at him. At this man who had insulted her in German and then spent months proving he could be different, who had learned to see her, who kept showing up, kept trying, kept being better than he had been the day before. Yes, she said. Yes, I will do it. Jordan's smile was radiant. We are going to help so many people. I know we are. They sat there, hands clasped across the table, surrounded by the restaurant that had become their place, building something neither of them could have imagined alone. Outside, Brooklyn continued its eternal rhythm. Inside, two people who had found each other across impossible distances were creating something that would outlast both of them. Something that started with a single word in German. Interessant. Interesting. How strange that the smallest moments could change everything. How remarkable that people could find each other in the most unlikely places. How beautiful that broken things could become whole again, if you were willing to do the work. But the real test was still coming. The challenges that would push them to their limits. The revelations that would threaten everything they had built. Stay with me, because this story is far from over. The Muller Foundation launched 6 months after that conversation in the Ethiopian restaurant. Keisha had spent those months designing every detail. The application process that would not humiliate people who were already struggling. The grant structures that provided real support rather than token gestures. The mentorship programs that connected recipients with people who had survived similar crises. She drew on everything she had learned during her own fall. The bureaucratic nightmares, the forms that seemed designed to discourage applications. The way most aid programs treated recipients like suspects rather than people who needed help. The Muller Foundation would be different. The launch event was held at Lewis Industries headquarters, not the usual black tie affair that Jordan's world favored. Keisha had insisted on something more accessible, a reception with food from local restaurants, music from a jazz trio that played at the club Jordan loved, an atmosphere that felt welcoming rather than exclusive. 112 people attended, academics, non-profit leaders, journalists covering the philanthropy beat, and in the corner, watching everything unfold, Jordan Lewis stood with an expression of quiet pride. Keisha took the small stage they had set up near the windows overlooking the city. "Thank you all for being here," she began. "I want to tell you a story. 15 months ago, I was cleaning the conference room on the 52nd floor of this building. I had a PhD from Columbia. I spoke 4 languages. I had published research that some of you might have read in academic journals, and I was making $17 an hour emptying trash cans because the system that was supposed to support scholars like me had failed completely." The room was silent, attentive. "My grandmother escaped East Germany in 1961, Keisha continued. She came to this country with nothing except what she knew. She used to tell me that knowledge was the one thing they could not take from you. She was right about that. But what she did not know, what I learned the hard way, is that knowledge without opportunity is just another kind of prison." She paused, letting the words settle. The Muller Foundation exists to provide that opportunity, to catch brilliant people before they fall so far that climbing back becomes impossible. We are not here to give handouts. We are here to give chances, second chances, third chances, as many chances as it takes for potential to become reality. Jordan was watching her from across the room. His expression was something she had never seen from him before. Wonder, gratitude, love that he had finally learned to feel. "I'm standing here today because someone saw me when I was invisible," Keisha said. "Because someone took the time to look past my uniform and recognize what I actually had to offer. Most people do not get that lucky. Most people remain invisible forever. The Muller Foundation is our attempt to change that, to make luck unnecessary, to build systems that see people for who they really are, not just what they appear to be." She raised her glass. "To my grandmother, Elsa Mueller, who taught me that survival is its own kind of triumph. And to everyone here who believes that people deserve better than the circumstances that try to define them." The room raised glasses in response. Afterward, as the reception wound down and the last guests trickled out, Jordan found Keisha standing by the windows looking out at the city lights. "That was remarkable," he said quietly. "It was terrifying. I hate public speaking. You could not tell. You seemed completely confident. I learned to perform confidence a long time ago. Fake it long enough, and sometimes it becomes real." Jordan stood beside her, close but not touching. "I am proud of you," he said. "I know that sounds inadequate, but I am so proud of what you have built, of who you are. We built it together. You designed it. I just wrote checks." Keisha turned to look at him. "You did more than write checks. You listened. You learned. You became the kind of person who would fund something like this. That is not nothing. I had good teachers." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. "What happens now?" Jordan asked. "Now we do the work. Process applications. Award grants. Change lives. The foundation is just infrastructure. The actual impact comes from the people we help. I meant with us. What happens with us? Keisha considered the question. We keep going. We keep learning each other. We keep building whatever this is. I want more than that. The words hung in the air. Keisha felt her heart rate increase. What do you mean? I want to know this is real. That we are not just dating. That this is going somewhere. Jordan, we have been together for 6 months. That is not nothing. I know. And I am not trying to rush anything. I just need to know that you see a future here. That you are not going to wake up one day and decide this was all a mistake. Keisha studied his face. The vulnerability there. The fear that he was trying to hide but could not quite manage. Why would I decide it was a mistake? Because I am not easy to be with. Because I still make mistakes all the time. Because there is a part of me that is terrified you are going to realize you can do better and leave. Jordan. Keisha reached out and took his hand. I have had plenty of opportunities to leave. I have stayed every time. Not because I have to. Because I want to. You want to be with me? Yes, I want to be with you. Despite your tendency to try to solve everything with money. Despite your occasional lapses back into CEO mode. Despite all of it, I want this. I want you. Jordan exhaled slowly. I love you, he said. The words came out almost surprised, as though he had not planned to say them. I love you. I have been trying to figure out when to say it, how to say it, whether it was too soon. But I cannot keep it in anymore. I love you, Keisha. The words settled over her like something warm and unexpected. For 3 years, she had believed she would never hear those words again. Had convinced herself she did not need to hear them. Had built walls specifically designed to prevent anyone from getting close enough to say them. And now, here was Jordan Lewis, the man who had insulted her in German and then spent over a year becoming someone worthy of her, telling her he loved her. I love you too, she said. The words felt strange in her mouth. She had not said them to anyone since her grandmother died, had not allowed herself to feel them, but she felt them now. Jordan kissed her, not like the tentative kiss on the rooftop months ago. This was something deeper, something that said this is real, this is permanent, this is us. When they finally pulled apart, they were both slightly breathless. So, Jordan said, what do we do now? I think we go home, your place or mine, and we figure out what loving each other actually looks like. That sounds like a plan. They left the foundation launch together, hand in hand, walking into a future that neither of them had expected, but both of them wanted. The first year of their relationship was not easy. There were challenges they had anticipated. The class difference that kept creating friction. His tendency to throw money at problems. Her tendency to withdraw when she felt overwhelmed. But there were also challenges they had not anticipated. Like Victoria Ashford, the annual Lewis Industries charity gala was the biggest social event on the company calendar. Jordan had warned Keisha about it for weeks. It is not my favorite event, he admitted. A lot of people performing philanthropy for social points, but it raises significant money for causes that matter. And as CEO, I cannot skip it. I understand. It is part of your job. I want you to come with me. As my partner. Officially. Keisha hesitated. That will be a statement. I know. I want to make the statement. People will talk. They will dig into my background. The bankruptcy. The cleaning job. Everything. Let them talk. I am done hiding the best thing that has ever happened to me because of what people might say. Keisha considered this. All right. I will come. But I am picking my own dress. I would not expect anything else. The gala was exactly as overwhelming as Keisha had expected. Crystal chandeliers caught the light and scattered it across the ballroom like artificial stars. Champagne flowed freely. Women in gowns that cost more than her annual rent floated through the crowd, air-kissing and making small talk that meant nothing. Keisha wore a deep burgundy dress that she had found at a consignment store. It was elegant without being ostentatious. It said, I belong here without saying I am trying too hard. Jordan met her at the entrance. He was in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, looking more like himself than she had ever seen him in business settings. You look incredible, he said. You look like you actually want to be here. I want to be wherever you are. They entered together, his hand warm on the small of her back. The whispers started almost immediately. Who is that with Jordan Lewis? Is that the consultant? The one from the cleaning staff? I heard she was a janitor before. Can you imagine? Keisha heard them all. She chose to ignore them. Jordan introduced her to board members, to investors, to the various people who made up the social ecosystem of extreme wealth. Some were polite, some were visibly skeptical, a few were genuinely warm. And then Victoria Ashford arrived. Keisha recognized her from photographs she had seen online when she was researching Jordan's past. Victoria was exactly as beautiful as the pictures suggested, polished in the way of women who had never known struggle, blonde hair perfectly styled, smile perfectly calculated, moving through the crowd like she owned it, which in many ways she did. Her family had founded half the charitable organizations represented at this gala. "Jordan," Victoria purred, approaching them with a champagne glass in hand. "It has been ages. And who is this?" Keisha felt Jordan's hand tighten slightly on her back, a protective gesture. "Keisha Monroe," Jordan said. His voice was steady. "My partner." The word hung in the air. Partner, not girlfriend, not date. Partner. Victoria's smile thinned almost imperceptibly. "Monroe, I do not recognize the name." "Which family?" "Just my family." Keisha kept her voice light, conversational. "My grandmother and me. She raised me in Brooklyn." "How charming." Victoria's gaze traveled down Keisha's dress with practiced assessment, the kind of inventory that was designed to make the recipient feel small. "And what is it you do, Ms. Monroe?" "I am a linguistic consultant. I specialize in German business communications, and I run the Muller Foundation, which provides support to academics facing financial crises." "Really? That is quite specialized. Where did you study?" "Columbia. PhD in Germanic languages and literature." Victoria's expression flickered, the first genuine reaction Keisha had seen from her. "Columbia. Impressive. Though I heard that program lost most of its funding a few years ago. Adjunct positions must have been quite competitive." The comment was surgical, designed to probe for weakness, to find the soft spot and press on it. Keisha recognized the strategy. She had seen it in academic circles, in corporate boardrooms, in every space where people used information as ammunition. But she had spent 2 years being invisible. She knew how to observe, and she had observed enough at this gala to know exactly how to respond. They were competitive, Keisha agreed, which is why I left academia for private sector work. The corporate world values efficiency over prestige, which I find refreshing. Less posturing, more results. She paused, letting her gaze settle on Victoria with the same assessing quality Victoria had used on her. Though I imagine prestige has its advantages in certain circles. Family legacy can open doors that merit alone cannot always reach. The silence that followed was heavy with understanding. Keisha had just acknowledged without malice, without aggression, that she knew the difference between earned success and inherited access, that she was not intimidated by Victoria's pedigree, that she was exactly as confident as she appeared to be. Victoria's smile turned brittle. "How delightful to meet you. Jordan, we should catch up sometime." She drifted away, leaving a wake of expensive perfume and unspoken resentment. "That was impressive," Jordan murmured once she was gone. "I have been dealing with people who underestimate me for years. At a certain point, you learn to fight without raising your fists." "She did not bother you?" "She tried to, but I stopped letting people like her bother me a long time ago. She has nothing I want, nothing I need. The worst she can do is disapprove of me. And her disapproval has no power unless I give it power." Jordan looked at her with something like awe. "I spent 4 years married to her. I spent those years feeling like I was never quite good enough, like I was always failing some test I did not know I was taking. And you just walked in here and made her completely irrelevant in 30 seconds. That is because I know who I am. I spent 3 years figuring that out while I was cleaning offices. Victoria cannot make me feel small because I already know exactly how big I am." Jordan pulled her closer. "I love you," he said quietly. "Have I mentioned that today?" "Only 3 times. Then let me make it 4. I love you." They spent the rest of the gala together, dancing, talking to the people who were worth talking to, ignoring the whispers that followed them everywhere. By the end of the night, Keisha understood something important. She had been worried about fitting into Jordan's world, about whether she belonged at events like this, about whether the gap between her background and his would always make her feel like an outsider. But she did not feel like an outsider. She felt like herself, and herself was exactly enough. The tabloids came 2 weeks later. The headlines were exactly as cruel as Keisha had expected. Billionaire's new girlfriend, from cleaning lady to executive suite. Jordan Lewis's unlikely romance, the janitor who captured his heart. Rags to riches or gold digger goals. Inside Jordan Lewis's relationship with his former employee, the stories dug into everything. Her bankruptcy, her grandmother's death, her time cleaning offices at Lewis Industries. Every detail of her fall was exposed for public consumption. The comments sections were worse. She is obviously using him. Another gold digger pretending to be in love with a billionaire. How original. He could have anyone, and he chose a cleaning lady. There must be something wrong with him. Jordan wanted to sue, to silence, to protect. "We can shut this down," he said, pacing her apartment with barely contained fury. "My lawyers can send cease and desist letters. We can threaten defamation suits. We can make their lives miserable until they retract every word." Keisha watched him pace from her spot on the couch. "And then what?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, then what? You sue them, they retract the stories, and then the next outlet publishes something similar. You cannot silence the entire internet. You cannot sue everyone who has an opinion about us. I can try." "Jordan," Keisha's voice was gentle but firm. "This is not something money can fix." He stopped pacing. "So what do we do? Just let them say these things about you. We let them say whatever they want, and we live our lives anyway. How can you be so calm about this?" "Because I spent 2 years being invisible. I know what it feels like when no one sees you. This, people seeing me wrong, is almost better. At least they are acknowledging I exist. That is the most depressing thing I have ever heard. It is realistic." Keisha stood and crossed to him, taking his hands in hers. "The people who matter, the people who know me, they know the truth. The people who read tabloid gossip and form opinions based on headlines, their opinions are worthless. Why would I let worthless opinions affect my life?" Jordan looked at her for a long moment. "How did you become this person?" "What person?" "This person who is completely unshakable, who lets everything roll off her, who does not seem to care what anyone thinks." "I care," Keisha corrected. "I just choose carefully who I care about. Random strangers on the internet do not make the list." She squeezed his hands. "I need you to trust me on this. The best response to these stories is living well, showing up together, being visibly happy. That will do more to change the narrative than any lawsuit." Jordan nodded slowly. "All right, I trust you. We will handle it your way." The weeks that followed were a lesson in resilience. Keisha gave one interview, a carefully chosen publication, a thoughtful journalist who actually listened. She told her story honestly. The PhD, the grandmother, the medical bills, the bankruptcy, the cleaning job, the moment in the conference room when she finally stopped being invisible. The article went viral for different reasons than the tabloid stories. People started sharing their own experiences. Academics who had lost careers to financial crises. Brilliant people who had been invisible because circumstances forced them into jobs that did not reflect their abilities. The narrative shifted from gold digger to survivor. One comment in particular stood out. "I have a master's degree and I clean hotel rooms because my husband got sick and the medical bills destroyed us. I thought I was the only one. Thank you for showing me I am not alone." Keisha read that comment and cried, not from sadness, from the realization that her story mattered, that her visibility, as painful as it sometimes was, might help someone else feel less invisible. The Mueller Foundation received 3,000 applications in the month following the article. They did not have enough funding to help everyone, but they helped who they could. And with each grant, each success story, the foundation's reputation grew. Keisha threw herself into the work, reviewing applications, conducting interviews, designing new programs. She was building something that would outlast her, something that would catch people the way she had not been caught. Jordan supported her completely. He provided resources without trying to control. He offered advice without trying to take over. He learned to be a partner rather than a savior. One evening, 6 months after the tabloid storm, they were sitting in his penthouse. The apartment had transformed over the months of their relationship. Her books on his shelves, her art on his walls, plants she had insisted on because the space needed life. It looked like a home now, their home. "Can I ask you something?" Jordan said. "That depends on what it is. When you were at your lowest, when everything was falling apart and you were taking the cleaning job, Did you ever think things would turn out like this? Keisha considered the question. No, I did not think about the future at all. I was surviving day to day, hour to hour sometimes. The idea of being happy again, of having something like this, it was not even on my radar. I had stopped letting myself imagine anything beyond getting through the next shift. What changed? You saw me. That sounds simple, but it was not. I had been invisible for so long that I had started believing I deserved to be invisible, that my circumstances reflected my worth. When you looked at me like I mattered, something shifted. I remembered that I was more than my job, more than my struggles, more than everything I had lost. "I am glad I insulted you in German," Jordan said. Keisha laughed. "That is a strange thing to be glad about. If I had not said something so awful, you would not have responded. You would have stayed invisible. We would have never talked. I would still be the person I was before, walking past people without seeing them. You changed my life, Keisha. That started with me being terrible and you refusing to accept it. I guess terrible moments can lead to good places. That should be the Foundation's motto." Keisha smiled. "It is not exactly inspirational. It is honest, which is better than inspirational most of the time." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. "I have been thinking about the future," Jordan said eventually. "What about it? About what I want it to look like? Who I want to share it with?" Keisha felt her heart rate increase. "And what did you decide?" "I decided I want you, not just now, forever, or as close to forever as humans get." "Jordan, I am not proposing. Not yet. I know you need time. I know trust is hard for you. But I want you to know what I am working toward. I want you to know that when I look at the future, you are in every version of it I can imagine." Keisha was quiet for a moment. "I spent a long time believing I would be alone," she said finally. "Not just single, alone. I thought that was the safest way to live. That if I did not let anyone close, no one could hurt me. And now I think I was confusing safety with emptiness. I was not protecting myself. I was just being lonely in a way that I could control. Does that mean you see a future with me? It means I am trying to let go of the fear, to believe that this is real, that you are not going to wake up one day and decide you made a mistake. I am not going to do that. You cannot promise that. Nobody can promise that. You are right." Jordan took her hand. "I cannot promise I will never change. I cannot promise everything will always be perfect, but I can promise that I will keep choosing you, every day, for as long as you will let me." Keisha looked at him, at this man who had been so easy to hate in the beginning, who had become so impossible to imagine living without. "Okay," she said. Okay. I will keep choosing you too, as long as you keep being the person you have become. Deal." They sealed it with a kiss. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm. Inside, two people who had found each other against all odds were building something that neither of them had believed possible. A future. Together. The second year of their relationship was different from the first. The newness had faded. The constant discovery of each other had settled into something deeper. They knew each other's rhythms now, each other's triggers, each other's ways of coping with stress. They also knew each other's flaws. Jordan still struggled with his instinct to control, to manage, to solve problems with resources rather than presence. He was better than he had been, but the tendencies remained. Keisha still struggled with vulnerability, with letting him all the way in, with trusting that he would not disappear the way everything else in her life had disappeared. But they worked at it, every day, every argument, every reconciliation. One evening, Keisha came home to her apartment to find Jordan waiting outside her door. "Something happened," he said, and he looked more serious than she had seen him in months. "What is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong. I just need to show you something." He led her to his car and drove them to Lewis Industries. The building was dark at this hour, most employees gone home, but security waved them through without question. They took the elevator to the 52nd floor, the same floor where it had all begun. Jordan led her to his office and stopped outside the door. "Close your eyes," he said. "Jordan, what is this? Just trust me. Close your eyes." She closed her eyes. She heard him open the door, felt him guide her inside with gentle hands on her shoulders, heard him position her in front of something. "Okay, open them." She opened her eyes. In front of her, on his desk, sat a framed document. It took her a moment to understand what she was looking at. Her PhD diploma, the one she had thought was lost forever, destroyed in the chaos of bankruptcy, gone along with everything else she had been forced to leave behind. It was professionally restored. The water damage that had warped it was gone. The frame was simple but elegant. Her name stood out in the center, clear and proud. Dr. Keisha Monroe, Columbia University. How? Her voice was barely a whisper. I hired investigators to track it down. Jordan's voice was quiet behind her. It took months. The storage facility where your belongings ended up had been sold. The new owners had almost thrown everything away. But we found it, in a box in a warehouse in New Jersey, buried under things that nobody thought mattered. You tracked down my diploma. I tracked down proof that you were always this person, that no job, no circumstance, no struggle changed what you actually are. You earned this long before you met me. It has nothing to do with us, but I wanted you to have it back. I wanted you to remember. Keisha touched the glass. Her fingers trembled. I thought it was gone, she said. I thought I would never see it again. Now it is yours. Forever. No one can take it from you. The tears came. She did not try to stop them. She had not cried about losing the diploma when it happened. She had been too numb, too focused on survival, too buried under the weight of everything else she was losing. But now, holding it again, she felt the grief she had not let herself feel at the time. Grief for who she had been, for what she had lost, for the years of invisibility that had followed. And underneath the grief, something else. Healing. I love you, she said. The words came out thick with emotion. I love you, Jordan. I love you so much. I love you too. Jordan wrapped his arms around her from behind. I love who you are. I love who you were. I love who you are becoming. All of it. Every version of you. She turned in his arms and kissed him. The kiss lasted a long time. When they finally pulled apart, Keisha looked at the diploma again. I want to hang this somewhere, she said. Somewhere I will see it every day. Your office at the foundation? No. She thought about it. Our home, wherever that ends up being. I want it somewhere that reminds me that what I know cannot be taken away. That my grandmother was right about that, even when I stopped believing it. Our home. Jordan repeated. I like the sound of that. We should probably find one. An actual home. Together. I've been looking at places. Jordan's voice was carefully casual. Houses. In Brooklyn. Near your old neighborhood. Keisha stared at him. You have been looking at houses. Just looking. I wanted to be ready. In case you ever decided you were ready. And you were going to ask me about this when? When the moment felt right. Is this the right moment? Keisha looked at the diploma. At the man who had tracked it down. At the future that was suddenly becoming very real. Yes, she said. This is the right moment. Before we reach the end of this story, before I tell you how everything comes together, I need to pause and speak directly to you one final time. We have traveled a long distance together, from that conference room where a single German word changed everything, through the pain of Keisha's past and the emptiness of Jordan's, through the slow, difficult work of two people learning to trust each other, through the challenges that tested everything they had built. If this story has moved you, if you believe in second chances and earned redemption and the courage it takes to let someone truly see you, I need you to do something. Hit that like button right now. Not for me. For everyone who has ever been invisible and fought to be seen. For everyone who has ever been hurt and found the strength to love again. For everyone who believes that people can change if they are willing to do the work. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that their circumstances do not define their worth. That being overlooked does not mean being lesser. That the most extraordinary people are often hiding in plain sight. Subscribe to Mr. Dawson Long Stories and turn on notifications because stories like this are what we do here. Real stories about real people navigating impossible situations. Stories that prove life is messy and complicated and absolutely worth fighting for. Drop a comment telling me what this story meant to you. Did you see yourself in Keisha? In Jordan? In the invisible people we pass every day without noticing? Your engagement is not just numbers. It is how I know these stories matter. It is what keeps me creating them. Now let me tell you how this ends. 1 year after Jordan gave Keisha back her diploma, they stood together at the annual Mueller Foundation Gala. The foundation had grown beyond anything they had imagined. 347 grants awarded. 86 academics returned to their careers. 22 new PhDs completed by people who had been on the verge of giving up. The stories kept coming in. Emails from people whose lives had been changed. Letters thanking the foundation for catching them when they fell. Messages that proved their work mattered. But tonight was about more than the foundation. Keisha stood at the podium, looking out at a room full of people who had come to celebrate what they had built. Jordan watched from the front row. Beside him sat some of the foundation's earliest grant recipients. Scholars who had been invisible and were now doing work that would change their fields. People who had been caught before they could fall all the way. "Thank you all for being here," Keisha began. 3 years ago, I was cleaning the conference room on the 52nd floor of a building owned by a man who did not know I existed. I had a PhD. I spoke 4 languages. I had knowledge that I thought would protect me from anything. It did not. She paused, letting the words settle. But it turns out that what I learned in my years of invisibility was more valuable than anything I learned in graduate school. I learned that every person has a story, that the people we overlook are often the ones with the most to teach us, that circumstances can break anyone, but they do not have to define anyone. Her eyes found Jordan's in the crowd. I also learned that people can change, that the person who dismisses you today might be the person who sees you tomorrow. That redemption is possible for anyone willing to do the work. She smiled. The Muller Foundation exists because 2 people who had every reason to stay broken decided to build something instead. We exist because someone who had everything learned to see someone who had nothing. We exist because a single word in German started a conversation that changed both of our lives. She raised her glass. To everyone who has ever been invisible. To everyone who has ever been underestimated. To everyone who has ever been dismissed and doubted and written off. You matter. Your stories matter. And we are here to make sure you get the chance to prove it. The room raised glasses in response. Afterward, the gala continued. Music and conversation, and the particular energy of people who believed in what they were doing. Jordan found Keisha near the windows, looking out at the city. "That was a beautiful speech," he said. "I meant every word. I know you did. That is what made it beautiful." They stood together in comfortable silence. "I have been thinking," Jordan said eventually. "About what? About that conference room. About the person I was that night. About how close I came to never knowing you existed. What about it? If you had not spoken up, if you had stayed invisible, what do you think would have happened?" Keisha considered the question. "I would have finished cleaning, gone home, come back the next night and done it again. You would have found your Stuttgart report and forgotten the entire interaction. We would have continued existing in parallel, never intersecting. That is terrifying. It is also how most lives work. People pass each other constantly without connecting. Ships in the night, invisible to each other. We were lucky. We were more than lucky. You were brave. You spoke up when you did not have to. You risked your job to defend your dignity. That is not luck. That is courage." "I was tired of being invisible," Keisha admitted. "Something broke in me that night. I just could not do it anymore. I am glad you broke." "Me too." Jordan took her hand. "There is something I want to ask you," he said. "And I want to ask it here. In this place we built together." Keisha's heart rate increased. "Jordan?" He did not kneel. That was not his style, and she was grateful. He just stood in front of her, holding her hand, looking at her like she was the only person in the room. "I have spent the last 2 years learning to see people," he said. "Learning to be present, learning to be the kind of person who deserves connection. I spent the 10 years before that being empty and lonely and successful in all the ways that do not matter. You changed that. You changed me, not by asking me to change, by showing me that change was possible. Jordan, I do not want to spend another day wondering what our future looks like. I want to build it. With you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep next to you every night. I want to fight with you about money and make up with you about everything else. I want to grow old with you, to become whoever we are going to become, together." He pulled a small box from his pocket. "Keisha Monroe, will you marry me?" The ring was simple, elegant, not ostentatious. A band of gold with a single diamond. Exactly right. Keisha looked at the ring, at the man holding it, at the room full of people who represented everything they had built. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. "They can take everything except what you know." But her grandmother had been wrong about one thing. They could not take what you knew. But they also could not take who you loved, who you chose, who chose you back. Yes, Keisha said. Yes, I will marry you. Jordan slid the ring onto her finger. The room erupted in applause. Someone had been watching. Everyone had been watching. But Keisha barely noticed. She was too busy kissing the man who had once called her useless, the man who had spent 2 years proving he could be different, the man who had found her diploma in a warehouse in New Jersey and tracked down her grandmother's story and built a foundation in her honor. The man she loved, the man who loved her back. They got married 6 months later. Not a grand affair, not the society wedding that Jordan's position would have warranted. A small ceremony in Brooklyn, at the park where Keisha's grandmother used to walk. 50 guests, mostly people from the foundation, a few of Jordan's executives who had become genuine friends. The staff from the Ethiopian restaurant who had watched their relationship develop over dozens of Thursday dinners. Keisha wore a simple white dress. Jordan wore a suit without a tie. They wrote their own vows. I promise to see you, Jordan said. Every day, in every circumstance. I promise to never make you invisible again. I promise to keep speaking up, Keisha said. To keep telling you the truth even when it is uncomfortable. To keep challenging you to be better than you were the day before. They exchanged rings. They kissed. They became husband and wife. The reception was at the Ethiopian restaurant. Injera and Dora Watt and the jazz trio from Jordan's favorite club. Dancing and laughter and the kind of joy that comes from being surrounded by people who actually know you. At some point in the evening, Keisha found herself standing alone near the window, watching the celebration unfold. Jordan found her there. What are you thinking about? My grandmother. Keisha's voice was soft. I wish she could have seen this. She sees it. You do not believe in that. I did not used to. Now I am not sure. But I believe that her love for you is still here. In who you became. In what you built. In everything the foundation does. That is a kind of immortality. She would have liked you. You think so? Eventually, after she was done being suspicious. She was very protective. I would have worked to earn her approval. The same way I worked to earn yours. Keisha smiled. You did earn it. Both of ours. In case that was not clear. It is clear. It just still surprises me sometimes. That I get to be here. That I get to be yours. You get to be mine. And I get to be yours. That is how this works. Jordan pulled her close. I love you, Dr. Keisha Monroe Lewis. I love you, Jordan Lewis. They stayed like that for a moment, holding each other while the party continued around them. Two people who had found each other across impossible distances, who had built something neither could have built alone, who had proven that people can change, that second chances are real, and that the most extraordinary connections often start in the most unlikely places. 3 years after their wedding, Keisha and Jordan were sitting in their Brooklyn home. The house was everything they had wanted, warm and comfortable, and filled with evidence of the life they had built. Books on every surface, plants in every window, her PhD diploma hanging in the living room next to the cleaning uniform she had kept and framed. Never forget where you started, she had said when she hung it up. That is when you find out what someone is really made of. The Muller Foundation had expanded beyond anything they had imagined. 50 employees now, grants distributed worldwide, a model that other organizations were replicating. Keisha still ran it, still reviewed applications personally, still remembered what it felt like to need help and have none available. Jordan had stepped back from daily operations at Lewis Industries. He still owned it, still attended board meetings, but the company ran itself now, managed by executives he trusted. He spent his time on the foundation, on their home, on the marriage that remained the center of both their lives. On this particular evening, they were sitting on their back porch, watching the sun set over the Brooklyn skyline. Can I ask you something? Jordan said. That depends on what it is. The same answer as always. Jordan smiled. If you could go back to that conference room, to the night I insulted you, would you change anything? Keisha thought about it. No, I would not change the struggle. The struggle made me who I am. I would not change the years of invisibility. They taught me to see. I would not change any of it. Not even the pain. The pain was the price, and what I got in return was worth it. What did you get? She looked at him, at this man who had started as an antagonist and become a partner, a husband, a home, everything, she said. I got everything. Jordan took her hand. So did I. They sat together as the sun went down, two people who had found each other in the most unlikely circumstances, who had chosen each other every day for years, who would keep choosing each other for all the years to come. The story of Jordan Lewis and Keisha Monroe did not end there. Stories never really end. They just reach places of temporary rest before continuing in directions we cannot predict. But in this moment, on this porch, watching the sun set over the city that had brought them together, they were complete. Not perfect, never perfect. They still argued, still struggled, still worked every day at the impossible task of being truly known by another person. But they were complete. And that was enough. More than enough. Everything. I want to end this story by speaking directly to you one final time. You have stayed with me through 20,000 words. Through heartbreak and redemption. Through invisibility and recognition. Through the slow, difficult work of two people learning to see each other clearly. Thank you. Thank you for investing your time, for caring about these characters, for believing that stories about love and second chances and earned redemption are worth telling. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the invisible people in your own life, if it made you believe that change is possible, I need you to do something. Hit that like button. Share this video with everyone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Mr. Dawson Long Stories so you never miss another narrative that proves life is complicated and messy and absolutely worth fighting for. Drop a comment telling me your story. Have you ever been invisible? Have you ever been seen? Have you ever taken a chance on someone who seemed unlikely, only to discover they were exactly who you needed? Your engagement is not just numbers on a screen. It is how I know that these stories matter. It is what makes this community real. We are building something here, something that believes in the power of narrative to change lives, something that proves that the most extraordinary people are often hiding in plain sight. You just have to learn to see them. Until next time, remember the word that started everything. Interessant. Interesting. How strange that the smallest moments can change everything. How remarkable that people can find each other in the most unlikely places. How beautiful that broken things can become whole again if you are willing to do the work. This has been Mr. Dawson Long Stories. And this has been the story of the poor cleaner with a PhD who silenced a rude billionaire CEO with just one word when he tried to humiliate her using German. Thank you for listening.